Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about 10 very underrated pre-merge villains. What I love about villains is that there's so many ways to get the designation. Sure, you can set out to be a villain with intentionally diabolical or cutthroat gameplay, but accidental qualities like hypocrisy, greed, or arrogance can also a villain make. The Ross Geller, Dawson Leary, Carrie Bradshaw effect. Sadly, some villains are cut down before they can reach their full villainy potential, leaving us to wonder what might have been. So, I want to celebrate them. Now, underrated, properly ranked, and overrated are all matters of opinion, but there are 6 pre-merge villains who I think generally get their due online and are talked about with some regularity by myself and others. So I'll be excluding the following 6 players. That would be Jatia, Drew, Garrett, Rob Z, Bobby, and Austin. All that said, let's dig into 10 seriously underrated pre-merge Survivor villains. The 10th most underrated pre-merge villain in Survivor history is So in Survivor Worlds Apart. So is the first boot of Worlds Apart, and that is genuinely a shame. I think she really did have Natalie Bolton-esque upside for one-liners about picking her teeth with jugulars, if only she'd lasted long enough to do so. I mean, her first confessional is about how she makes all of her employees cry. The potential was most definitely there.
I'm a buyer for a major department store. I am demanding. I've made pretty much every person that's ever worked for me cry at one point. I guess I'm the devil, yeah.
This season was divided by occupation, white collar v blue collar v no collar, and So was on the white collar tribe. One of 2 players that really epitomizes the cold corporate capitalism that I think is the whole point of this tribe. The other would be her partner in crime, Joaquin, who picked So on day 1 to help him make a decision on behalf of their tribe. Honesty or deception, in the form of rice for the tribe or an idol clue. To pull off the deceive option, So comes up with one of my favorite galaxy brain lies ever. She makes up a fictional neutral option and tells the tribe they selected that. Which, So, that still makes you look selfish. Only a corporatist would think that saying being honest would have caveats attached. Unfortunately, this pretty directly leads to So's downfall, as the other 4 players team up against her and Joaquin and vote her out at the first tribal council. Even still, no one really even holds the lie against her. Carolyn says she would have done the same thing. But voting her out is not personal, it's just business. So remains one of the biggest missed opportunities of Worlds Apart, and its greatest pre-merge villain. If not for, well. At number 9 is Joaquin in Survivor Worlds Apart. Whereas much of the rest of his white-collar tribe embraced the most boring parts of corporate life, spending 80% of their day in pointless meetings, Joaquin embraced the inherent cold-blooded backstabbing that comes along with the corporate ladder climbing of Survivor. If only he could have done it well. Right off the bat, Joaquin is selected by his tribe to represent them in a big tribe decision, whether that's because he looks like every marketing bro stereotype rolled into one, or because he simply hadn't seen enough Survivor to know that this is a terrible position to be in on day 1. Who's to say? Regardless, Joaquin and So make the aforementioned decision to help themselves to an idol clue because, come on, you think that this guy is in the business of helping others? After So and Joaquin are blindsided at the first tribal council, Joaquin manages to hold on till the swap. Although he's initially down in tribal numbers, Joaquin starts up a cute little bromance with Rodney, based on their mutual love of popping champagne, late nights at the club, and swinging their arms in tandem. But this bromance is short-lived, as Mike and Dan blindside Joaquin in episode 6 to force Rodney back into their arms. I find the pre-merge of Worlds Apart frustrating for, well, many reasons, but a big one is that Joaquin never really manages to get into a power position. This guy was already talking mad trash playing from the bottom. Imagine what literally any control would do to him.
Who would have thought it'd be that damn hard to make a fire? Nobody knows how to make a damn fire. None of us do. Why would we? White collar. We hire blue collar to go make us a fire.
At number 8 is Lindsay in Survivor Africa. Lindsay was a chief architect of the Mallrats Alliance, the 4 younger players on Samburu. This is a tribe defined by their age schism, with 4 young and 4 old, and a very strong generational animosity between the two. Lindsay was perhaps the most despised of the younger players by the older players, as she was easily the most outspoken about her love of her fellow young people, as well as the player with the lowest tolerance for some of the more difficult personalities on the older side.
Oh, if we don't vote Frank out of here, I'm gonna kill myself.
We're gonna get Frank voted out, don't you worry.
Let's start here. If you were named Kim, Brandon, or Silas, Lindsay was awesome to be around. She even made her alliance bead necklaces in a show of unity. Not so unifying, though, was that she made them literally right in front of T-Bird and Carl, intentionally to agitate them. Samburu loses their first immunity challenge in episode 3, and the votes predictably come down 4v4, but Lindsay beats Carl in a nature trivia tiebreaker quiz. With full control of Samburu, the younger players and especially Lindsay grow even more emboldened, knowing that they have a full majority and there's basically nothing T-Bird, Frank, or Linda can do. My favorite part is when they actually have the nerve to ask the older players to please vote for Lindsay again, so that none of the younger players accrue any additional past votes, this being an era where tiebreakers were determined by past votes. This request was not honored. At the tribe swap, Lindsay remains on Samburu with Kim and Brandon, and for the second time is the target at a tie vote, but this time has all those pesky past votes to break the tie against her, sending her out of the game one round before the merge. Lindsay is such a great pre-merge villain, cliquey and bratty with a flair for the dramatic, all with a poetic comeuppance, eliminated by past votes from players who were no longer on her tribe or even in the game. It's almost like karma biting you in a very specific place. At number 7 is Jimmy T in Survivor Nicaragua. You know, some villains are born, some are made, and some just desperately want to be put in, coach. Yes, this Massachusetts fisherman and Malcolm from the future was defined by his desire to compete in challenges, to the great irritation of pretty much everyone he came in contact with. Jimmy T would probably protest me calling him a villain, and some of you might too. But villainy isn't always in the form of diabolical gameplay. Sometimes it's in the form of total delusion, which Jimmy T is rather guilty of. Jimmy was on Espada, the older tribe in this young v old divided season, and right out of the gate clashed with his fellow Jimmy Johnson. Yes, that Jimmy Johnson. You see, as a 2-time Super Bowl winning football coach, Jimmy Johnson knows a thing or two about leading a team to victory, and so he takes that approach to Survivor, putting himself in the role of tribal coach, giving inspiring pep talks and leading Espada in tribal challenges. This all doesn't go down well with Jimmy T, who takes issue with Coach Jimmy's coaching style, specifically his strategy of benching Jimmy T. The feud percolates until the episode 3 Tribal Council, when Jimmy T actually suggests that Jimmy Johnson, again a 2-time Super Bowl winning coach, longtime Fox NFL Sunday analyst, and millionaire many times over, is threatened by him.
I don't know, maybe I'm a threat to his leadership role because I am a leader where I come from and I am assertive, often speaking my mind, and maybe he didn't want to be bothered with that. Could be that simple.
Incredibly, Jimmy T wins the war over Coach Jimmy, as Jimmy Johnson's voted out here, mostly because he realizes his net worth is greater than every person in this room put together, so he just kind of throws in the towel. I do think there is something to Jimmy T's point that he's undervalued. He is so eager for his moment in the sun, but is constantly undercut by his tribe, both at challenges and at camp. If they just give him a dub in some way, he'd probably be placated, and thus much less irritating. Still, he just couldn't accept that his value to the tribe was as a provider and worker, and not as a leader. At the episode 4 Tribal Council, he actually has a moment of clarity, genuinely getting emotional when he says he's man enough to accept the advice of his tribe and back off. Of course, it's all completely undercut by the fact that Jimmy is voted out moments later, having irritated Marty so much back at camp that he'd rallied the troops to vote him off earlier this afternoon. Marty, when he said put me in, he actually meant the challenge, not Ponderosa. At number 6 is Tyrone in Survivor Nicaragua. Alright, out of the gate, I gotta say that Tyrone is one of the most hilarious under-the-radar players ever on Survivor. He has this manner of speaking that sounds extremely sarcastic even when he's being sincere, and his face has absolutely no chill. He's so expressive, having major reactions to even minor statements. In fact, I'm hesitant to call him a villain at all, if not for his constant side-eye and sudden heel turn in episode 5. But let's start at the beginning. He began his game on Espada, easily their strongest physical player. Although that's not saying much when most of these people probably eat dinner at Old Country Buffet at 4:30 in the afternoon and get up 3 times a night to pee. At this stage in the game, he was loosely affiliated with the Majority Alliance on Espada, particularly Marty, Jill, and Eve, although never really in the main loop. He's focused primarily on keeping the tribe physically strong, and not super into the strategy aspect of the game. But his social game at this stage was pretty good, especially considering he was constantly making fun of people to their face and getting away with it.
There's nobody here that even knows my age. Not one person asked me.
I asked you.
No,
That's
you didn't.
one
Yes, I
question
did.
I never ask anyone.
No, you never asked me.
I don't want to be asked that.
You're not
I never
supposed to
told my
ask a
age.
woman her age.
How old are you?
48.
You look so young.
It all goes south for Tyrone at the episode 5 tribe swap, when his old-timey ways of picking up after himself and cleaning his own dishes irritates his new tribe members from LaFleur, who quickly turn against him, calling him bossy and perceiving him as talking down to them, which, yeah, he is. Tyrone's apparent eating of more than his fair share, despite initially protesting killing this chicken at all, seals his fate as the first boot from post-swap Espada. This is all depicted very negatively on the show, although on all accounts I get where Tyrone is coming from. But it's here he's dethroned by Benry, voted out prematurely, and robbing us of a full season of his legendary side-eye. Well, all hail the new king of Espada, I guess.
It's time to dethrone the king of Espada. Benry's here, baby. My bad.
At number 5 is Peter in Survivor Co. Wrong. Peter, an ER doctor with an uncanny resemblance to President Obama, was put on the Brains tribe in this Brain v. Brawn v. Beauty divided season. Peter, of course, is incredibly intelligent in real life, but on the island didn't exactly have the emotional intelligence to know he was rubbing his tribe the wrong way. With his extremely over-the-top arrogance, the Brains tribe initially found themselves strategically divided into 3 factions of 2, with Peter and Liz under the mistaken belief that they're the tribal MVPs and can pick whichever group of 2, Aubrey and Neil or Joe and Debbie, they'd like to go with. All along the way, Peter is constantly dropping gems about how in control he is, all as it becomes readily apparent that he's about to be in for a very big blindside.
Although Liz and I are good-looking people and we have great smiles, we're actually out for blood.
Everyone else.
They're like clay that we mold. They are indecisive unless given a decision. They need paternal direction, and I'm being that paternal person, providing them direction in the way I want them to vote.
Despite initially allying with Aubrey and Neil, by episode 3, they're targeting the 2 of them. Of course, the other 4 just align together and vote off Liz, leaving Peter all by his lonesome on Brainy Beach. Peter gets a second term in the game, though, when he makes it to the swap, sent to the new Gondol tribe with Aubrey and Joe. One thing I love about Peter is that even when he's completely on the bottom and knows it, which is always, he plays with an arrogance that would make you think he's got 10 immunity necklaces around his neck. At the swap, he flirts with the idea of betraying Aubrey and Joe, only to eventually walk that back. Later, Scott tries to confirm the whole blindside Aubrey plan is still on, and Peter tells him straight to his face that it's not happening and he's been leading him on all afternoon. All from his hammock throne. Scott, Ty, and Julia are so irritated they decide to vote for Peter over all of this, and in a literal last-second move, Aubrey decides to cut her losses and just vote him out right here. Legality of this ballot aside, I do wish Peter had stuck around a bit further, but I guess it is in the Constitution. You only get 2 terms. At number 4 is Bradley in Survivor Ghost Island. While many of the villains on this list were unwitting villains, unable to see how their actions were negatively affecting others, that is certainly not the case with Bradley, who embraced his inner mean girl on Ghost Island pretty much all the time. Bradley reminds me a lot of Courtney Yates, and I mean that as a major compliment. He spends basically his entire game laying around and complaining about, well, everything. We barely saw any Bradley on original Navidi, but he breaks out at the swap when he's sent to Malolo, which is, according to him, the not-so-great camp.
It's amazing. Look how pretty that is. There's not
no way that could ever get on.
It's freezing. I just want to be back in Navidi. Well,
It's
you
just
guys have like dirt and like, sand everywhere.
Yeah, sand is pretty coarse and rough, though, and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like you, Bradley. One of my favorite Bradley moments is when he's talking to Stephanie, who's desperately pleading for her life in the game. His response to all this? Just ending the conversation and walking away. Bradley eventually does get swapped back to Navidi, sent there with Dom and Chelsea, meaning, again, Navidi frustratingly has the numbers. But when they lose the last pre-merge immunity challenge, Dom and Chelsea actually side with Donathan and Libby and vote Bradley out for his bad attitude. This was the ultimate monkey's paw to my constant wishing that something would happen to shake up Navidi's grip on the game. Bradley would have been a great villain at the merge, and I say that despite knowing his whole post-merge strategy would have been Navidi strong. He had so much more complaining to do. At number 3 is Dave in Survivor China. Here's the thing about Dave. The guy had no off switch. He was constantly moving both his mouth and his body, almost always to his own detriment. Dave started off alright despite being on Jeonhu, and volunteered to help lead them at their first tribal council. Some structure is something this tribe desperately needed. But Dave's idea of leadership is a days-long quest to create a fire pit instead of gathering food or working on the shelter. This exhausts his tribe so much they lose the next 2 challenges. Seriously though, dude, how high are you trying to build that thing? China's already got a great wall. Nearly everything about Dave is just bizarre. He can't even do challenges normally.
Dave and Aaron on the gangplank. Dave like a little cat. This is odd.
Dave butted heads with, well, everyone, but particularly Ashley and Sharia. And by episode 4, everyone's Dave patience has completely run out, even on Fei Long, who kidnap him.
Oh man, I told you what to hug him. You're right, I apologize.
Unfortunately for Dave, this afternoon away from camp seals his fate, as the rest of Jeonhu realize just how pleasant life is when he's anywhere else. Dave's pitch to stay over Sharia for his work around camp is considered, but ultimately rejected by the tribe, mostly because all he does is build this fire pit anyway. You know, I wonder what Dave's up to lately. Some say he's still building that fire pit to this very day. At number 2 is Natalie in Survivor David vs. Goliath, one of the most Goliath-y Goliaths on the Goliath tribe. Natalie initially struggled to fit in with her fellow captains of industry, thought leaders, and bartenders, realtors, and cops. In real life, Natalie is an incredibly successful businesswoman and CEO, someone who tells people to do stuff and they do it. But in the early days of the Goliath tribe, that inclination really wasn't working for her fellow castaways. When the Goliaths lose the Episode 3 immunity challenge, Natalie's on the chopping block, leading to a very memorable clash between her and Jeremy, who initially started out as her ally, trying to help her out in the game. But somewhere along the way, their relationship soured, and the tribe turns against Jeremy, who was just a bit too transparently schemy. It's here that Natalie drops one of the greatest voting confessionals ever on his way out the door.
You talked that brother-sister love stuff, and you showed me no love. So that stinging sensation you feel in your eyes right now, that's a Natalie napalm. Get off of my island. By the way, your skin is gorgeous, darling.
I mean, when you're right, you're right. Natalie ended up swapped to Jabini with Mike, Angelina, Nick, and Lyrsa, where her Goliath majority ostensibly would keep her safe, but a series of unfortunate egg and jacket-related events led to her downfall. Those would be her insistence on taking the dozen eggs that Jabini won at reward and boiling them immediately. This going against the advice of a literal chef. She also tries to convince Nick to give up his jacket in order to make it through the Episode 5 vote, which again doesn't go down super well. Mike joins with Nick and Lyrsa to vote Natalie out this round, and Angelina's in on the vote too, but votes Lyrsa in an attempt to get Natalie's jacket on her way out the door. Okay, say the line, Angelina.
Natalie, is there any way I could have your jacket? Natalie?
The cherry on top of this great exit is that Natalie even wears the jacket in her final words as a flex. Only Natalie could be so entertainingly petty, even as the credits roll. The most underrated pre-merge villain of all time is Ace in Survivor Gabon. Ace hardly even seems like a real person, honestly. He goes beyond everyday villainy into cartoonish supervillainy, with his ridiculous pretension, smarmy demeanor, shaved head, and fake English accent?
I'm the full package. I'm not just a physical competitor, I'm a mental competitor. I have no fear of being the sole survivor. I have no fear of standing in front of Jeff and expecting my check for $1 million.
He's like a James Bond villain, but like from one of the bad movies, you know? Ace started Gabon on Coda and fancied himself a cunning leader, helping Coda both in setting up camp as well as guiding them in tribal relaxation techniques. Of course, Marcus, Charlie, and company were always actually in control of this tribe, simply keeping Ace around as a shield to take the hits, which he did frequently. From the start of the game, Ace was quite drawn to Sugar, and true to her name, this would be an alliance that would be sweet at the start, but ultimately come to destroy him. When Ace is swapped to Fong, he's clearly in the minority, but manages to survive several rounds due to his alliance with Maddie and general physical capabilities being quite desperately needed on this trainwreck tribe. I mean, he does his best to keep this tribe afloat, but it's a tall order.
The immunity challenge was so much fun. It was like we were legless chickens racing against sleek weasels.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing. Ace is betrayed by Sugar in episode 6 after Kenny convinces her that Ace is only using her for her idol, and she votes him out, kicking off the season in earnest, which will be defined at every turn by the whims of Sugar and whoever talked to her last. Ace is such a great villain because he was completely unable to turn off the pomposity. Everything he says is dripping in ego. The man could recite the alphabet and it would be pretentious. What an absolute legend. In his own mind. Got nothing else for ya. To help me be a sleek weasel instead of a legless chicken, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.